It's true that I'm a kind of complicated dame. I don't even know my original name. I've been changing the damn thing since I was younger.
Well, I was born in a town called Gastonia, which is pretty redneck, rural North Carolina. And yeah, I moved to Syracuse, New York when I was about 12 years old. And so I did high school up there and then like a semester or so of community college before I decided to go off and do something else. Funny enough, I moved to Knoxville in 2010 to be a worship pastor for a church plant down here. And so I was doing the music there. It was a church that met in the theater, and then we met down below at Domino's up in Strawberry Plains. Actually, coming down the pike there, I got caught going 70 over the hill. And just as the cops' lights disappeared over the hill, I pulled into the Domino's and parked down by the church, and I didn't get a ticket. So, serving the Lord served me pretty well, I guess. I would not at that time have called myself a Christian music artist, but I would now. If I heard it, I would say, well, that's Christian rock is what that is. That's bad Christian rock. So yeah, I was playing as 437 at the time, which is a Bible verse. So it's pretty Christian rockish to have a Bible verse in your band name. And then I released an album called Living Room Tapes as Kyle Adeem, and that's when I changed, and I went by Kyle Adeem for most of my time here in the beginning, the first wing of my experience with the music scene here. And I would play at the Remedy Coffee right over here, the old Remedy Coffee building. It's awakened now, but I first heard about WUTK in 2010. I was listening to the radio. I really liked WDVX, but at the time I wasn't as into country and Americana. And WUTK had a lot more of a diversity of playing, and it appealed to me a lot more. So I was listening to It's a Gorgeous Song. It's by Janis Joplin. Oh, Lord, won't you buy me? And it's like back to back with Eddie Vedder and all that. There's just such a diversity of music on there. And so that kind of became what stayed on the record player in the apartment. I love the Locals Only program a lot, especially having so many friends making music and writing songs in the area, to be able to hear all these people and to discover new musicians in the scene, especially somebody coming into town new, was really great for me. I still am trying to learn more about the history of music as it dates back, to the earliest century in Knoxville, the L&N railway station and all that. But yeah, that was my favorite program for sure. I remember WUTK was doing some shows with Barley's, and I became aware of Benny tangentially at that time. We had a lot of mutual friends, and people would say, you ought to give your CD to Benny Smith down at WUTK. He'll play it, I don't know who this character is, but it's just folks around, folks about town. And I had an album that came out in 2012, I want to say, that was called Armor. And Benny Smith, I think, was the first person to play it on WUTK. That was the first time that got any airplay at all. And yeah, he's been a really good friend to me and to everybody here in Knoxville. My favorite thing about Benny is that there are a lot of folks who, if you rub them the wrong way, they'll just never work with you again, and that's how it ends. And Benny has no problem like letting you know letting you know where you stand, and I really appreciate that about him a lot. He's a really thoughtful and articulate guy. Yeah, I went by Kyle Adeem until 2016. I released an album called Kyle Adeem is Dead, which was the best way to part with my former moniker, I thought. And that was the first Adeem the Artist album. I did Kyle Adeem is Dead, and then I've done a couple of EPs, but Cast Iron Pansexual is really the first real release that I've done as Adeem the Artist. It had some push behind it, and the Tiger Prince of Knoxville and Born in a Weigel singles, I think, is most of what I've done.
I was born in a Weigels off Western Avenue. I had a nibble of some brittle in the gas hospital, but I knew it'll be a little better to chew, and I was slamming.
I wrote Cast Iron Pansexual during the pandemic, kind of processing through some stuff and having a lot of downtime to do inner work. And the intention was to release it to my 50 or so Patreon subscribers because they were the bulk of the money I was making off of music at that time, you know. I had no intention of releasing it publicly, so it was a very earnest, self-disclosing project. And through my work with a online publication, kind of got encouraged to make it a public release. So yeah, I would say that it's been pretty surprising to me. I thought a lot about not releasing it up until the week before we were slated to release it. I remember before the pandemic, we had the Rhythm and Blooms Festival, which turned out to be the last Rhythm and Blooms Festival. And I drank a lot, as we all did. They sold out of beer like 3 days in a row or something. And walking around with Shimmy, Brian Paddock from Shimmy and the Burns, and Josh Smith, and the Appalachian Hippie Poet was chumming around, and Mike McGill, and just kind of, you know, staying up late, walking from spot to spot, listening to all these great bands. It was so diverse. It was so, I mean, I went and saw Good Guy Collective at Pilot Light, and it was one of the best shows that I ever saw here. I mean, it was fantastic. Those guys have so much energy and so much positivity, you know? And it was such a, I thought about it many times during the course of the pandemic, what an inspiring few days that was, and how at home, you know, where it felt like Knoxville was like ours a little bit, you know what I mean? Like when I moved here in 2010, I remember thinking, this place is for me. You know, I would come down to the old city right out here and walk around, and it was grimy as hell, you know. I read about the history of it, about how, you know, the structural integrity of the buildings got compromised because, you know, the city was just like, what if we just build these buildings on top of themselves and we could put a road in, you know? Just like everything about Knoxville felt so frenetic and chaotic and like Wild West-like. You know, hearing tales of like local businesses that I won't name breaking into other local businesses to like steal the physical bar out of them because they were owed money, you know, and those bars are now sitting in those businesses today. That's a beautiful thing. I think that was something that I was really enamored with, you know. And there are times now where I've watched, you know, as Knoxville's Chamber of Commerce and the Tourism Board and those things, you know, for all their well-intended efforts, try to rebrand the city in a way that doesn't feel scruffy to me. And sometimes that makes me as an artist feel very isolated. You know, I see the rent going up and becoming unaffordable. I see the aesthetics of the city becoming more centered around condos on the riverside and things like this, and less of the sort of ruffian roots of the city that drew me in. But the music, you know, the Pilot Light, this room here, the Jig and Reel, Barley's over here, just being around live music, that's still here, you know, that scruffy spirit is still here. You know, eventually we'll all get priced out, I'm sure, but, you know, that's the Knoxville music scene to me. It's innovative, it's persistent, you know, and it's driven as hell, and it's so community oriented. You know, we talked about Christina Horn and Tim Lee, and you know, those folks have been really generous and kind, and I love to be a part of a scene with all of them.
When I'm dead and gone, I hope I carry on in some way, but you better never hold my dirt in a stuffy old church. Lord knows I never lived by the letter.
I'm gonna lie. Yes, WUTK was the first radio station to ever play my music on the radio. And if somebody in Syracuse wants to get mad at me about that, then my email's on the internet.
It's the only way I'm gonna live forever. You just sing one of my songs from time to time.